Her family called 911, not because she had fallen, not because she was bleeding or unconscious or in physical danger of any kind. They called 911 because the woman they loved, their mother, their sister, had become completely, utterly, and unshakably convinced that she was dead. She had stopped eating. There was no point. Dead people don't need food. She had stopped speaking to most people. The living made her uncomfortable. She wanted to be somewhere more appropriate for her condition. She wanted to go to the morgue. When the paramedics arrived, she was cooperative, calm even. She explained her situation to them with complete clarity. She was dead. She smelled of rotting flesh. She was certain of it, even though no one around her could detect anything. She needed to be with other dead people. The paramedics took her to a hospital instead. And the psychiatrist who admitted her typed 4 words into her chart that would change the direction of her treatment. Cotard syndrome. Walking corpse syndrome. The woman in the case file. The woman referred to in the published case study as Ms. L to protect her privacy was 53 years old. She was a recent immigrant, a Filipino-American woman whose family had noticed, over several weeks, a gradual and terrifying change. She had become withdrawn. Her appetite vanished. She stopped engaging with the people around her. She became convinced, with a certainty that no argument could shake, that she had died and that her body was decaying. She could smell it. The delusion was not vague. It was not metaphorical. It was not a figure of speech for feeling depressed or low. Ms. L was describing what she experienced as a literal, physical, sensory reality. She was dead. She smelled like a corpse. She needed to be with other corpses. The living world was not where she belonged. Her family, terrified, desperate, exhausted from weeks of watching someone they loved disappear into an experience they couldn't access, called 911. In the psychiatric unit, Ms. L was started on a combination of medications. Olanzapine, an antipsychotic, at 25 milligrams daily. Escitalopram, an antidepressant, at 20 milligrams daily. Lorazepam for anxiety. 1 month later, she was discharged. The delusions were gone. The smell of rot she had sensed on her own skin, the certainty of her own death, had lifted. She expressed hopefulness about her future. She said she wanted to participate in follow-up care. She was alive again. In every sense that mattered. Her case was published in 2008 in the journal Psychiatry, one of fewer than 200 documented cases of this condition in the medical literature. How it began: Paris, 1880. To understand what happened to Ms. L and to the dozens of other documented patients who have experienced this condition, you have to go back to Paris, 1880. A French neurologist named Jules Cotard stands before his colleagues at the Société Médico-Psychologique and presents the case of a patient he calls Mademoiselle X. Mademoiselle X had denied the existence of parts of her own body. She denied having a brain, nerves, a chest, entrails. She described herself as nothing more than skin and bone, a hollow shell moving through the world. She believed she was condemned to eternal damnation. She therefore could not die a natural death. And because she believed she could not die, and because she believed she had no organs that required nourishment, she refused to eat. Mademoiselle X died of starvation. Cotard called what he observed le délire de négations, the delirium of negation. A delusion not of something present, but of something absent. The negation of organs. The negation of the need to eat. The negation of existence itself. The condition was named after him. Jules Cotard himself died 9 years later, in 1889, at the age of 49, of diphtheria, contracted while caring for his daughter during an epidemic. The syndrome that bears his name survived him. The cases from Edinburgh to South Africa. In 1990, a man known in the medical literature only as W.I., a Scotsman, was discharged from a hospital in Edinburgh after recovering from traumatic brain damage sustained in a motorcycle accident. His physical injuries were healing. But something else had come loose. WI had become convinced that he was dead. His mother, concerned about his recovery, arranged for him to travel to South Africa. And as he stepped off the plane into the dry African heat, the warmth hitting him immediately, unfamiliar, intense, a new logic assembled itself in his damaged mind. He was in hell. He had died from sepsis in hospital. He was certain of it. Or perhaps from AIDS. He had read a story in a newspaper about a man with AIDS who died from septicemia. Or perhaps from a yellow fever injection. He couldn't be sure of the cause. But the destination was clear. This was hell. And the heat confirmed it. He believed, with complete sincerity, that he had borrowed his mother's spirit to show him around hell, and that she herself was still asleep, back in Scotland, unaware of where her spirit had gone. When WI eventually sought neurological testing in May 1990, he was no longer fully convinced he was dead, though he still suspected it. Tests revealed something striking. He could accurately distinguish between dead and alive individuals in every case, except one. When evaluating himself, the categorization broke down. WI was treated for depression. Within a month, his delusions diminished. He had not been to hell. He had been in a brain that had lost the ability to recognize itself as living. What is happening inside the brain? So, what is actually happening when someone develops Cotard Delusion? The honest scientific answer is, we don't fully know. Fewer than 200 documented cases exist. Research is limited. Neuroscientists describe the pathophysiology of Cotard syndrome as largely speculative. This is a condition that medicine has named, observed, and treated, but has not yet fully explained. What researchers do believe is this. Deep in the brain, there is a region called the fusiform face area, a cluster of neurons specialized for one task, recognizing faces. When you see someone you know, this region fires. It identifies the face. Separately, the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, responds to that recognition with the appropriate feeling. Familiarity, safety, connection. In healthy brains, these two systems work together seamlessly. You see your mother's face. The fusiform area says, "That is your mother." The amygdala says, "And here is what your mother means to you." In Cotard syndrome, that link appears to sever. The recognition fires. The emotion doesn't respond. There is no feeling attached to the face, no sense of familiarity, no sense of connection, no sense of reality. The result is a terrifying blankness. The world becomes derealized, present but unreal, visible but disconnected from meaning. Now apply that same disconnection to the patient's own face. Their own hands. Their own body. The brain processes what it sees. But no emotional recognition fires back. No sense of self. No sense of being alive, of being present, of being real. The body is there, but the brain registers no corresponding aliveness. And the mind, searching for a framework that explains this catastrophic blankness, arrives at the only answer that seems to fit. I must be dead. Brain imaging studies of Cotard's patients have found reduced cerebral blood flow in the parietal lobes and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, regions critical to self-perception and identity. Some patients show atrophy in the frontal lobe, the region responsible for integrating sensory information into a coherent sense of self. The delusion is not a choice. It is not a metaphor. It is the brain's best available explanation for a neurological catastrophe it cannot otherwise interpret. The spectrum and the strange logic of immortality. Here is something that makes Cotard syndrome even stranger. It doesn't always look the same. In roughly 45% of documented cases, patients believe they don't exist, the classic, "I am dead" presentation. But in the other 55%, something different occurs. They believe they are immortal. This seems like a contradiction, but follow the logic of a mind untethered from the normal emotional feedback of being alive. If the body generates no sense of existing, if everything feels unreal, if the self feels absent, then the ordinary rules of mortality no longer apply either. Some Cotard's patients have refused to eat not because they believe food is unnecessary for a dead body, but because they believe nothing can kill them. They have stood in traffic. They have put themselves in danger with a calm certainty that harm cannot reach them. Because they are beyond harm, beyond death, beyond the physical constraints that govern living things. This is Cotard syndrome at its most philosophically vertiginous. A condition where the brain's failure to generate a sense of life produces, paradoxically, a conviction of indestructibility. The same broken circuit. Two completely different conclusions. Recovery and what it feels like to come back. The good news, and it is genuine good news, is that Cotard syndrome is treatable. In many cases, the combination of antidepressants and antipsychotic medications resolves the delusions within weeks. Ms. L, the 53-year-old woman who called 911 from her conviction that she was dead, was walking out of the psychiatric unit within a month, expressing hope about her future, asking when she could come back for follow-up care. The Scotsman W.I., whose brain had placed him in hell, saw his delusions diminish after treatment for depression. Within weeks of addressing the underlying neurological and psychiatric conditions, his self-categorization corrected. He was alive. He knew it. The circuit had been partially repaired. For patients who don't respond to medication, electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, has shown remarkable effectiveness. Case studies document patients with severe, medication-resistant Cotards who experienced what researchers described as rapid improvement following ECT. The treatment works by inducing brief, controlled seizures under anesthesia, which appear to reset the dysfunctional brain networks responsible for the delusion. What does recovery feel like from the inside? A man named Graham, whose story was published in New Scientist in 2013, attempted to take his own life and woke up convinced that his brain was dead. When I was in hospital, he told the journalist, I kept telling them that the tablets weren't going to do me any good because my brain was dead. I lost my sense of smell and taste. After treatment, Graham described the experience of being believed by his doctors, of having his account taken seriously rather than dismissed, as part of what allowed him to reconnect with reality. To be told, we know this is real to you. We are going to help. The close. Cotard syndrome sits at one of the strangest intersections in all of human medicine. It is a condition defined entirely by absence. Not the presence of pain or fever or a tumor. The absence of the sense of being alive. The absence of the emotional signature of existence. And yet the people experiencing it are fully present, fully conscious, fully capable of describing, in precise and often articulate detail, everything they are not feeling. There have been fewer than 200 documented cases since Jules Cotard first described it in 1880. The true number is almost certainly higher, misdiagnosed as severe depression, dismissed as metaphor, never properly identified. Every one of those cases represents a person who looked at their hands and felt nothing, who looked in a mirror and saw a stranger, who reached for the most coherent explanation their broken brain could produce, and arrived, somehow, at the conclusion that they were dead. Most of them were wrong. Most of them came back. Cotard syndrome is one of those conditions that makes you question everything you assume about how the mind experiences being alive. If this video made you think, subscribe, because next week there's another case on this channel that medicine has no explanation for. Drop a comment. Which part of this surprised you most? I read every one.